Hey everyone, welcome to episode 182 of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins. With me tonight, Billy B. Man. What's up, man?
Not much, dude. Stoked to be on. Stoked to be
Yes.
on. We just dropped our first episode of the Dynasty Underdog Personal Ranking Symposium. That is a mouthful, but I think I've got it locked in. Me and Jake, did some work on the rankings and stuff, and we're putting together a kind of like evergreen limited series that'll be on the YouTube channel and on the podcast stream. But it's just kind of going over all the ins and outs of rankings and we're going to get really into the detail of it, but it's kind of talking about like how we rank, why we rank, and all that kind of stuff, trying to educate the audience. So a lot of fun with that. That dropped yesterday. Like I said, we're going to drop every Monday for a limited time until that series is done. So keep a lookout for that and hop in our Discord. I'm just stoked to be on here, man. We got a lot going on.
Hell yeah. Senior Bowl week, Shrine Bowl is going on. It's kind of got like my juices. I've been in Peter Howard's database, just like trying to see what do I like, who have I not heard, what's going on here, what sticks out, and I can't wait to get into that. These episodes after the fantasy season and then before like prospect type stuff that we do is kind of like I enjoy it, but it's just not the same, right? Like I want to get in there and
it's a decompression. You know what I mean? We're decompressing a little bit before we get back into it, before we really get rolling again. Because prospect season is really kind of one of the more workload heavy parts of the dynasty cycle for us specifically, right? Because we really grind, get in there, and doing the film stuff and the analytics and all that. And I'm actually going to pull a bunch of PFF data. I'm going to clean up some of Peter's data, put it on a sheet for us, and make sure we're all ready to go with that. I've been thinking about that a little bit, but just getting our ducks in the row for some of this other stuff I've been talking about. So man, we just had the conference championships, which were wild games. We have so much going on, man, heading into the Super Bowl. And then, like you said, Senior Bowl and all the rookie content we got going on. Jeez, man, it just can't stop, won't stop.
Get it. All right. Awesome. So this one is cool. Finding the next Puka. So obviously we're out there now. We're watching film. We're grinding the analytics, and everybody wants to find that next Puka. What do you think our odds are of finding the next Puka?
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up because I thought this was a pretty interesting tweet by our buddy Todd, friend of Pure Potential podcast. I think he's going to be on there on the next episode at Dynasty at Dynasty S Flex, so some super flex. But who's this year's Puka Nacua? And I think a lot of people are looking, trying to find who that is in the stats, in the sheets, as they say. And they're going to look to the yards per out run because Puka was a stud in that category, as a late draft pick to the Rams. But to burst everybody's bubble, this tweet is just showing, all of the late round draft picks. I guess it was post third round maybe, or day 2 or post day 2. I'm trying to see here, but it's nothing before the third round that they're showing. So it's late round draft picks that had over. Yeah, so not first and second rounders, and yards per out run greater than or equal to 3.25 draft year with final season college stats. And they're just a bunch of bums. I mean, it's Hakeem Butler, Tyler Johnson, Jalen Darden, Tylan Wallace, Cedric Wilson, just every player you don't want, and then Puka Nacua. So just kind of highlighting that it's not going to be that easy to find the next Puka Nacua. They don't arrive that often, if they do at all. But I don't think that just, digging into one metric was going to find you Tank Dell or Puka Nacua. I'm taking the long road to grandma's house here. You're going to need to do your homework to find those late round gems in your rookie drafts, right? I mean, Puka Nacua, again, like it was not like everybody was looking at his yards per out run and was like, that's the guy. Like, that's not how it happened. It happened because it was camp hype, because people were in on, his size and what he was doing on the field and getting rushing work. And there's a whole profile built there. So as we get into prospect profile season and everybody is, looking for that next Puka Nacua, just be discerning and understand that you're going to need to do the work or listen to people who are doing the work to get there and even, get halfway there and finding, those late round guys and really digging in. So, just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it's important to point out that when you'll oftentimes see people comp incoming players to past players. That's what we typically try to do on the sheet side of things. Um, just looking for like what historically has worked in the past, and yards per route run, great stat, love it. But if you're seeing somebody comping other players and they're only using like one or two metrics, likely they only did those one or two metrics for a reason to try to pump up a player. So there's a lot that goes into it. Like Billy said, there's a whole other side of it. You can't just do it from one or the other. We try to meld Billy's film and then the analytics that we both are into to try to get a better picture, and we've done a pretty good job. But one thing cool on this tweet though that I kind of wanted to point out, which is something that like I think like Devi guys and stuff just have it better than us normal normal dynasty guys. But he was saying that Puka was ranked wide receiver 8 on 247 coming into college.
Yes.
And I know that Billy is always talking about look at 247, look at what they were. Were they 5-star, 4-star? Where'd they go? And so that's no small thing. Wide receiver 8 in the whole recruiting class, the whole entire nation. I don't think I've never seen that brought up once during like rookie drafts or anybody's profiles really. Like that was just never anything that I even knew about until just today. So anyway, fun stuff. There's not a very good list here. I did like Jalen Darden. 4.3 yards per route run, but like that dude was electric. It just never caught on. So
he was. I mean, you do bring up a good point. You mentioning the 247 aspect of it. It's just funny because that is kind of how I was keyed onto him originally, was from a Devi aspect. I had him on a Devi team 2 years before he was even entering the NFL draft. It was because I was digging through 247, and you do have to look past like the top like 5 guys, because you'd be surprised. There's like former 4-star prospects, 5-star prospects that are kind of sitting lower there, and you wonder why. And then you go and like look at their profile and you do a little bit of the homework, and I ended up on a BYU article talking about, this kid was a former high level recruit, and he's being used, in a versatile way, and all these different things. And you're just like, okay. And it starts to piece together. So definitely 247 is a great resource in finding those forgotten high level recruits, right? Because there's guys who go to Alabama and fall out, and then they end up on another team balling out, and now they're in the draft again. But you could have had your eyes on them really earlier. You can have an edge just by knowing about that guy, and he'll go a little bit later in the draft because the rest of your league mates aren't really doing the homework or listening to the right people.
All right, love that. Also, I don't know if Matt Stafford wasn't there, would we have Puka? The world may never know.
Yeah, you can't. That's a question we can't answer.
All right, so why hold a dynasty startup now rather than wait for training camp or the NFL draft? I think the easy answer is it's fun.
Yeah, that's
we
definitely
want to do it. That's why.
I'm glad you came with that answer, because that's the real answer.
Yeah, you could wait. It's fine.
Yeah, no, you actually, I realized that you don't know exactly where this came from, because I'm trying to start up a 12-team dynasty league with a bunch of people from home, and I'm trying to combine like 2 friend groups because they're both really into fantasy. They both know each other, and I know it would be a really fun league.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the idea. And not a lot of them, but at least 2 of them, I'd say, are probably newer to Dynasty or new to Dynasty completely. And, I'm talking about, send me over the dues. Like the draft starts in, 16 days, like, a couple of days after the Super Bowl. And I get the question, why are we drafting before training camp? And I was like, that's a fair point. Like, totally fair question. So I responded in kind, and I was like, fair question. A dynasty league can be created or, formatted in any way, right? Like you can, or in a bunch of different ways. You can draft with rookies in your draft. You can draft with kickers as placeholders and have the rookie draft later. You can draft now. You can draft in August. But like injuries will happen regardless. If you draft today, an injury could happen tomorrow. If you draft in August, an injury could happen the next day. Like it doesn't really matter, but there's also the idea that there's opportunities to be had this early in the offseason, right? With so much influx in the dynasty landscape, with so many values shifting, this could be an opportunity to get an edge on your league mates, right? Maybe you have the key to what's going to happen next season, right? Maybe you have been looking at XYZ player or X team, and you have an idea that they're going, the next CJ Stroud, that in the rookie draft you're going to get Michael Penix, and it's all going to work out. These could, obviously hyperbole here, but there's a lot of edges to be had this time of the season when you're doing a dynasty draft. So I think Uriah's answer is the real answer. It's just a ton of fun. Like, if you've never done a slow draft in the offseason, you're totally missing out. So, and that's also at the end what I said to them too. I said, it's also just mad fun, and I'm excited for anybody who hasn't experienced this to experience it.
Yeah.
So that's probably the real answer.
Yeah, I can see, especially if it's a new dynasty player, like brand new, and they've only played redraft, like they're worried about injury concerns a little bit more, because one bad injury and like your whole season's over and you have to restart again next year. You don't have to worry about that in dynasty. You can fix it. Pop in there, just have fun.
Yeah, and what you just said is another big part of it too. Values change every day. Things change all the time. Your team that you drafted this year is going to change a lot in the next 2 years. So, like, does it really matter when you draft? Like, no, it doesn't really matter, other than the landscape and the advantages and the shiftiness of the values, right? Like, it's in season, or not in season, but closer to the season. A lot, there's a lot more stability, obviously. Things are more concrete. Players have gone through free agency, most likely. We know where these players have landed in the NFL draft, right? It makes sense. Like, I get the comfort level of, like, everything's kind of set, but you're going to have to deal with these kind of things throughout the offseason. Like we're saying, like, you're going to, next offseason after your startup draft, there's going to be trades going on, and like, it's going to be before free agency, and you're not going to know where players are landing, and you're going to have to make judgment calls and have foresight. And that's really one of the biggest challenges, and where you can gain some of the biggest edges in dynasty is having foresight and trying to stay grounded, being level-headed, and using foresight that is some reasonable foresight, not just trying to predict the future and say, I know what's going to happen, and A-Chain's going to be running back 1 overall. Like, that's not reasonable, right? Like, let's rein ourselves in, shoot our shots with some accuracy here and some confidence, but we got to be grounded to do that.
All right. The return of Arthur Sith. Awesome. The Sith Lord. Arthur Smith. He's back with Pittsburgh as a offensive coordinator, which is interesting. It's whatever. It seems like grounded Pittsburgh fans are still on board with this. Maybe he's a good OC. Maybe he's just a terrible head coach. I don't know. Am I worried about the position players? Yeah, a little bit. I think I just kind of like want to draft like the backup tight end, the backup running back, anybody who's actually a stud, maybe just like whoever's behind them. Arthur Smith is going to want to play just like he did in Atlanta. I'm not too concerned. I respect that organization, and I know Tomlin runs a really, really good shop there, no matter what, always has for as long as he's been doing this. So if he's on board with Arthur Smith, then I guess I kind of have to be on board with Arthur Smith.
Last time we saw Arthur Smith as an offensive coordinator, it wasn't that bad. Like, it was Derrick Henry and AJ Brown, and I mean, there were some pretty fantasy relevant players. It's when he got full control that everything kind of went south. So Pittsburgh, where there's a strong leadership, core, especially with head coach Tomlin, I doubt Arthur Smith is going to be given that much control to kind of impact things in such a negative fashion. I think it's probably going to be better than what we saw with the guy like Matt Canada there. Could be good for a guy like Najee Harris though. Like, it really, if he's back in town, could be good, but it's going to be really rough, I think, for one of the pass catchers. I don't think that kind of offense can sustain Deontay and George Pickens. So something's got to give there. You don't know which one is going to be. Personally, I would like to see Deontay out of Pittsburgh, but I would probably rather not have any of those wide receiver assets, or really any of those assets on that team, to be honest, not because of Arthur Smith, but because of Arthur Smith and just kind of the state of the team in general. Maybe if they get the quarterback right, you feel better about it. But I don't think Arthur Smith is going to be the reason that things are terrible there. I think he's been a fine offensive coordinator, and we just can't stand the guy at this point because he ruined Bijan Robinson's rookie season and has ruined the early part of Drake London's career. Yeah. So I mean, there's that, but Atlanta also, I mean, it's worth mentioning, the other coaching change. Atlanta did get a coaching change as well. They got Raheem Morris as their head coach, and he brought over the Rams' former QB coach and game plan coordinator. I think it was Zach Robinson. That's who it was, Zach Robinson. So I mean, that's actually pretty interesting. I do think that with Zach Robinson, coming from that Rams system, Raheem Morris, they might be a little bit more forward thinking than what we've seen from a guy like Arthur Smith. And they have the pieces, they have the ingredients, I should say, to kind of cook up what I think they want to cook up. So we'll see if they can make it work over there.
Championship week check-in, winners and losers. We did this last week, the divisional round. So here are some winners. You have Brandon Ayuk, Travis Kelce, of course. Surprised Taylor Swift isn't listed here, but
combo.
Good for her.
Kelce Swift combo.
And then Rashee Rice. Look, Kelce was that entire first half. Just going out there. I mean, he's tired. That's probably why he didn't do anything in the second half, is because he's probably needed a nap. Like I said, dude's old. Look, all these guys are having a great season there in San Francisco. Ayuk, Debo wasn't fully healthy. The one that really stood out to me is Rashee Rice. Has he really solidified himself as like the number 2 option going forward?
Maybe Rice maintains the same role, but I feel like if Kelsey's there still next year and they add another significant talent at wide receiver, I'm not sure the Rice role stays as voluminous. I like what I see from him. I just think that it's going to be volume based. I really am just concerned that they at some point add more weapons, but maybe that's a concern that is unfounded. Like, they're doing pretty well with it, the team as constructed. And obviously they like Rashee Rice, but he's like, he lives off of short area targets and yak. And I don't know if that's what I want to lock myself into in fantasy. So yeah, I'd probably be trying to get out. If I could get like a mid first, if I could swing that somehow, I'd definitely be trying to re-roll the dice and go get a higher end prospect.
I agree with that. If that's what he's going for, then for sure.
I think Kelce built back up some value, just, given that he still could retire. So the fact that he's built back up this value is great. Like, this is the perfect time to get out of him, honestly. Like, I don't want to be caught holding the Kelce bag. Sure, maybe you get one more year out of him and you will get him at a pretty solid value. But man, like, if he retires, it's over. You know what I mean? You got nothing. So for me, if I'm not like top 2 team, just lost the finals and everything else on my team's perfect, and he's just sitting there, like, yeah, sure, keep him. Other than that, like, I'd be searching for a late first, and I think that he's done enough in these playoffs to make everybody consider, oh, he's going to be back next year and he'll be doing this again.
That's a great point. I mean, the worst case scenario is that he retires and he's on your team, just because unless you draft it, I mean, any standing dynasty league right now, I mean, for the most part, like, you didn't get Kelce cheap, right? There's still a ton of value there. It's right on the edge, just waiting for a cat to kind of just paw it off the table and it's gone. So I agree with you. If you're not one of those players that either made it to the championship last year or just like a couple points behind from getting there, like, I think the risk is too much. Because I mean, honestly, think about it. Kelce, they go on, they win another Super Bowl. He's had an amazing career. He is of age, and he gets to go and hang out with Taylor Swift the rest. It's like he's got a lot to look forward to off the field too. So there's a lot of incentive, I think, as a man, for him to retire. So it's not something I want to play around with too much. I don't think. A lot of risk there.
Yep. I was just looking at Rashee Rice's value in KDC, wide receiver 15, right behind Zay Flowers. I'd take Zay Flowers pretty easily. Probably about 10 spots from a 24 mid first, but yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable to expect to get that kind of return back. So
Yeah, I'd
He's
move up
right
for
there.
Iceland. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Ayuk, I think he's just done himself. I mean, even with Debo injured, having a playoff performance like he did there, helping lead them to a win, to be
Yep.
honest with you, over the Detroit Lions, with an absolutely stellar catch off the face mask of the defender and then a touchdown right after it. He's just kind of slowly but surely solidifying himself as a wide receiver one. Whether it's in San Francisco or somewhere else, I do think that transition will happen from Debo, or he'll just take over his own role somewhere else. He's been really great. So with Ayuk, wide receiver 10, 25 early first, right by JT Tyreek Hill. He's pretty expensive, but I mean, it makes sense. That's just the kind
Yeah.
of player he is.
Yeah. It might seem like a lot, but for what he's doing and what he's done, like it seems warranted. All right, some losers. Ooh, Flowers, man. Uh, Flowers, Bateman, and James and Williams. You don't want that to be like the last performance you see of the kid for the season that he's had as a rookie, which has been just, I think, really amazing and just so electric to watch when he has the ball in his hands. Like hang ups and bang ups will happen, right? So it's sad to see it happen as like that's your last memory going into the off season. That Flowers just like fucked up a little bit, uh,
Yeah.
but he's bailed the team out time and time again. Fourth downs, fourth and long, and just getting that yak, really converting on third downs a lot, and just has been a go-to player for such a young player. Like I'm not gonna hold it against him. I mean, I think he's a loser for the week, but like he won the year for as a rookie player. Huge Flowers fan.
He did win the year, and I'm putting him on here kind of tongue in cheek a little bit because he's obviously not really like a loser from a dynasty perspective, but absolutely, from this last game in the playoffs, real big loser. Just kind of the way it all went down, fumbling the ball into the end zone, a touchdown that they desperately needed that would have put them down by 3 points and really altered, I think, the state of the game. And then he goes and cuts his hand on the sideline in frustration right after. Just a terrible look. And I really wonder if some dynasty managers kind of just see the that rough ending and are like
Oh,
a
he
little
ain't
turned
it.
off by it. He ain't it, or that's I don't like seeing that drama. I wonder if there's just a slight opportunity maybe to get him for a little bit cheaper than you could normally. So
Maybe from like a really pissed off Ravens fan.
exactly. I mean, yeah,
Get this guy off right
exactly.
here. I got so many offers for Dak and CD after they lost. Like I just wanted to throw my phone. Like
I'm just looking at his week 1 through 17 here. 24% target share, 22% targets per route run, 1.7 yards per route run, 8.4 A dot, 23.9% team air yard share. I mean, he had a pretty phenomenal season. And I wonder, do you think that Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers can coexist?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think so. I think the smart offensive coordinator will see what uh, what Flowers was able to do, and hopefully, not rely solely on Andrews as like the receiving option because really, I mean, it's very similar to KC, right? You have Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey, and then whatever else, right? So Baltimore, you got Lamar Jackson and his legs and Mark Andrews, and then it was like didn't really have anybody else, or they didn't try to feature him. But I think Flowers has done enough that I think would hopefully open the eyes of the offensive coordinator to say, "Hey, this is a player. We need to get him the ball a little bit more." So I do believe there's room for that. Like, there's not a whole lot of teams where there isn't room for like another player besides their stud tight end. So
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think they both definitely need to be above 20% target share. They need probably both to be around 22 plus, and they're both going to need to be around like 1.7 or above in that yards per out run to really be producing most likely. And I'm just thought this was interesting. 1.4 yards per out run versus man coverage for Zay, 1.9 versus zone.
that makes sense.
That boy eats up zone
Yeah,
coverage.
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, 12.5 A dot in zone coverage. He's he's crushing it. Don't play zone coverage around Zay Flowers.
All right, next one is free Bateman. free bait. Someone trying to.
Oh, geez. I would
Hey,
come on. I
man,
was like, I nailed this one.
I know you're pretty happy about it.
I shouldn't be happy about a player not succeeding. It's terrible.
But I think Bateman's still a good player. I'm not like out on him. I think maybe
Mhm.
there's not enough. There's definitely not enough space on that field for Andrews, Flowers, for Bateman to be really fantasy viable. I do think he has a chance that he could go somewhere else and be a very solid wide receiver too, uh,
Mm.
possibly one. Say he went to like Patriots or something like that. He would, I think, probably be the best wide receiver on that team.
And he would fail miserably there too.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
that's probably more an indictment on the Patriots. But I will say that I just don't think that's true. No, and I don't want to say it like that. I do have some backing or at least some reasoning behind that. Nelson Aguilar produced more than him. Odell Beckham Jr. produced more than him. And Zay Flowers was still producing. And Mark Andrews were still producing at times. And obviously Aguilar and Odell Beckham Jr. not really at the same time, but those two were at all times demanding more targets, earning more targets than him. Like like a broken clock is right twice a day, right? You know what I'm saying? Like he can run a good route. Like nobody was ever saying that Rashad Bateman is a terrible route runner. Coming out, I did say, and I do believe that he would not give enough effort on every route. I don't think that's why he's not succeeding in the NFL or anything. That was part of the evaluation with him. He's not that strong. He's thin as a rail. He's not a true wide receiver one in any sense. He's not that great a route runner. He was just overhyped coming out, and I never really understood why. Like I understand that he was productive at Minnesota coming out. I remember the profile. I remember the prospect, but I just don't know why we're over why everybody got head over heels for this guy and why we can't let go. He's just not done enough. And yeah, injuries have impacted his career, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And maybe in another place where it's bereft of talent, like maybe he could, based on volume, produce a wide receiver 2 season or something like that. But this team, Nelson Aguilar and the ghost of Odell Beckham Jr. are not supreme talents. Like, let's be honest. And he's not outproducing them. So I don't know why we think he would do it elsewhere.
I know why. Priors.
Priors. Opium and priors. Yeah.
Don't check me in my priors.
I wanted to say that earlier about the Pittsburgh fans. That's what they're when they're excited about Arthur Smith, or they're trying to give you the rundown of like, hear me out. It's just the hope. You're just I get it though.
We'll see. I just have to believe in Tomlin there. So all right.
I'm doing the same with Gerard Mayo. Don't worry.
It's cool. Yeah, Mayo. Whatever. You're gonna put that mayo in some coffee and. Yeah. All right.
Will Levis. Yeah.
Jesus. Billy Blue Jeans. So Jameson Williams.
Billy Blue Jeans is so good. Shout out AJ. I wish we were live so he could. Oh man, yeah, we'll be live soon enough. I know my internet's going to be fixed soon. Don't worry.
All right, Jameson Williams. No surprises there. You say he couldn't demand targets, and Josh Reynolds could. And yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, I like do some low hanging fruit here. Jared Goff did have time with Josh Reynolds when he was in LA, so maybe there's some friendship bias there. And maybe Jameson Williams is this great talent that's just getting shunned because he's not Jared Goff's boy. Or Jameson Williams just isn't it.
You said Jameson Williams isn't having his Sunday brunches with Jared Goff. That's the problem.
No, he's not invited to the cookout.
He's not invited to the cookout.
No, hell no.
Isn't Jameson Williams just fancy Rashad Bateman?
Oh, no, not at all.
No, he's not just.
Are you serious?
He's just Rashad Bateman. He's Rashad Bateman if he went to Alabama.
Oh my god.
No, like, stop. I mean, they're very similar. Like that's definitely.
Yes, they're similar in the fact that they both have disappointed thus far.
I came up with that on the fly, and yeah, they're most similar in the fact that they have disappointed thus far for sure. That is their most similar quality, other than the fact that they're both super mid. But they're different players. Jameson Williams is obviously a more dynamic athlete, but I wasn't a Jameson Williams guy coming out. You know this. Mm-hmm. Also, another guy who I just didn't love his game. I thought that he was more of a deep threat, like speed demon, just kind
that's
of
what he's good at. Yeah.
beat you with his athleticism rather than technique. And he does have a little bit of that, but you can already see it didn't quite translate to the NFL. And he has a good deal of improvement to becoming a consistent player, I think. So
is next year his third year?
Next year is his third year, and obviously a career marred by injuries and suspension. But I did want to mention this because it was just noticeable that they were going to Josh Reynolds, and Josh Reynolds is dropping passes and still getting targets. I mean, those should be Jameson Williams targets, no? In the playoffs, like at some point, he needs to be the guy earning that work, and he's just not doing it, and he's given me no confidence whatsoever to believe that he's going to do it. And I said on Twitter that Josh Reynolds dropping those passes highlighted how much this team needs a true wide receiver too. They've been looking for it. They tried to do it with DJ Chark. They tried to do it with Jameson Williams, and they're probably going to have to take another swing at it in this draft of really talented wide receivers. Like, I don't think Jameson Williams is the answer, and I'm pretty confident that they know at this point that he's not a consistent option in the passing game, a guy who could earn, 90, 120 targets and really be an impact player. He's not that guy. He's really, I mean, what we've seen of him, he's been much more of a gadget type player. And I just think that, what we saw from them in the playoffs, they could have used another guy who could, move the chains, who could demand coverage from the defense. And I'm just not sure that that's what they have beyond Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver. So that's my concern with Jameson Williams. And I don't think him going, him anywhere else or spending another offseason with Goff is gonna really get him where he needs to be.
All right. So y'all guys have been doing some DU rookie mocks. I don't think I've done any of them with you guys. I've done two myself. Actually, yes, I was in one of them. So let's just talk a little bit about what you've seen and what we think about how things might change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did 5 rookie mocks. We had a bunch of people from our Discord, got some folks from some other Discords for a few of them. And I thought that, looking at some of the trends early on, just kind of taking a high level overview. We're not trying to do like player takes here, because I think it's super early to be like, this guy should go here and this guy should go here. But the idea of kind of doing these drafts is just like where general groups of players are going, like archetypes, like where they're going together positionally. Are all the positions, falling into certain ranges? Are there are more wide receivers going than running backs, or less tight ends going? That's more of the benefit of doing the draft right now, not necessarily like, oh, I got this player in this spot, because that's going to change. So when I was looking at this, that I noticed was that Brendan Rice is just significantly undervalued, under talked about. And I didn't know that he was Jerry Rice's kid. And I guess I've been out of the loop. I've been watching college football all year long, and I haven't heard his name much at all. Like, that's really, really strange to me. I think I'm going to have a lot of Brendan Rice. He's going in like the 3rd round a lot of these drafts. And again, he has the DNA. He has the pedigree. He's going to get attention from, a couple teams because of his dad. Like, Jerry Rice behind the scenes is probably talking to a lot of teams, and that's going to influence his draft position, his draft stock, one way or another. Yeah. Right, in probably a positive way for Brendan Rice. So I think he's going to be a riser from that fact alone, completely going unnoticed for some reason, and I don't understand why. So that's one thing I've noticed from a high level. Only 2 tight ends in the first 3 rounds of almost every one of these mocks.
Yeah.
2 tight ends. There's no way that holds, and all that tells me is that nobody in the community has done enough work on the tight ends to know if there are, a couple guys beyond JT Sanders and Brock Bowers who can actually get something done from a fantasy perspective. So I think there's some opportunity there for sure over the next couple of months to identify some of those prospects. Tight ends, as good of a class as we've had, not everybody's paying that much attention to them. You know what I mean? They don't get as much love as the other positions, that's for sure. Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Braylon Allen, Will Shipley, all seem to be pretty good values at running back. I'm not sure if those hold. They're going late 2nd, 3rd round, early 3rd round picks. And these are just really solid prospects. They're not elite by any means, but they're very solid prospects, and they're going later than I'd expect them to go, come April or whenever we May, I guess we'll be doing our rookie drafts. So I think we'll see a lot of changes there. I'd just be trying to buy up second round picks because I think there's going to be so much value in that mid to late second round. It just seems like it's chock full of it, and so many players I'm interested in are falling into that early third, and I'll be shocked if they stay there and how that's going to work out. So Marshawn Lloyd in the fourth is very interesting. USC running back, some pass catching upside, bigger body guy, a little bit of a unique player, just given those two factors, that he's bigger and he can catch passes. So a guy who in the fourth round, I'm not sure that's gonna hold. So interested in Marshawn Lloyd, and then Michael Penix in general, Bo Nix falling out of the first round. This is just something we see every year, and I'm just here again to say, don't let these quarterbacks fall out. There is value in drafting these quarterbacks in the late first. Will Levis, he rose in value so significantly.
A ton, yeah. After one game.
And he was in the second round. He got drafted in the second round of the real NFL draft, and people were down on him, with the Tennessee landing spot. And all it took was him launching a couple passes to DeAndre Hopkins, and now you're selling them for 2-3 firsts. Literally, that's literally, and I'm not exaggerating. 2 or 3 firsts is what people were talking about. And I think there's a lot. There's no way that Michael Penix in the late second holds. Like,
no.
When you have guys like Will Levis having a meteoric rise like that, you have to adjust. And we've seen this with Justin Herbert. Like, this is years and years and years of this happening, and I'm just surprised to see it again early on in rookie drafts. I don't think that'll hold, but just kind of highlighting some trends I'm seeing that are a little unusual, I think, this early on.
He has the ability to do exactly what Will Levis did as far as coming out of the gate and just having a monster game right away. Like, the dude could just rip the ball. The spiral and the rotation that he gets on that thing compared to some of these other quarterbacks is bar none. So I totally agree with you. And just the whole thought behind it, like you were saying, these guys that get drafted a little bit later, they're still would play super flex. So it might end up being like a Jordan Love situation where a guy gets drafted at the very end of the first round of the NFL draft. Eventually that team's going to give that kid a shot. And we saw what Jordan Love was able to do with his shot. He's another guy whose value just, especially in Superflex, just went absolutely nuclear. So I think that's just really good advice. Remember that we play Superflex. Plain and simple. All right. So you and Jake have been working hard on the rankings. I've been working on mine, but a lot slower. So they're not incorporated with y'all's yet, because I don't think that would be very fair to people. But what are some of your biggest risers and fallers so far in you guys' rankings?
Yeah, so most of these are from this week, but 1 or 2 are from the week prior, the update the week prior. I thought they were interesting to highlight here. But Khalil Shakur rose 29 spots, which I thought was pretty massive rise. I think that's, like, we don't see many shifts greater than like 25 for the most part.
Sure.
That, at least that I've seen in the few updates we've made since we've created our rankings. But 29 is pretty significant. And, I think that just has to do with Stephon Diggs is absolutely tanking at the end of the season. The potential of no Gabe Davis. I mean, he basically wasn't there at the end of the season, and not just because of injury. He earned very few targets. We went over this, I think, a week ago or so.
Yep.
And just, the entire receiving core there leaves a lot to be desired. But Khalil Shakur is one of the very few young players there with some upside and some promise. So I think it just makes sense that he's going to rise, and he was pretty far down our rankings. Like, we're not rising him up to wide receiver 20 here, but he got in, I think, to the top 100 area overall. And I think that makes sense. And I think rightfully so. He's a pretty good player. And I think he's going to be involved in a trade we're going to talk about in our next section here. Will Levis plus 24 spots. We're just talking about him. And, I think the benefit of talking about the risers and fallers in the rankings is talking about the process a little bit, right? Like, that's the important part of this. It's like, why, right? It doesn't necessarily matter that they moved up ahead of XYZ, but it's like, why is this happening? And then ultimately you are looking at the rankings. So it's like, here's the reason why they went up above those guys. They just hired a new head coach in Tennessee, a former Bengals OC, Brian Callahan. And it looks like they're heading in a more offensive-minded direction, right? In general, the league, you're seeing turned off. They're definitely a little turned off by the defensive-minded head coaches, right? I think just with the direction of the league, they want top-down prioritizing scoring points because in the current state of the NFL, you need to score around 30 points every game to win. Now, you need to play good defense too, no doubt about it, and you can win low-scoring games, and we've seen the Chiefs play great defense this year and win fairly low-scoring games, but they can put up 30 points when they need to. You know what I'm saying? So that's what you need to be able to do, and I think that's kind of where they're looking towards, and I think that's why we're seeing a shift in our rankings, because prior to this, it's like, well, they're just going to run the ball. Even if Levis is good, like they're going to lean on the run. They're not going to really give him the opportunity, but maybe with this change in philosophy from, the top down, we see more of an emphasis on Will Levis being the focal point of the offense of the Tennessee Titans. And that, I think that gives him an edge over some of the players that he was behind before.
I dig it.
Okay, cool. So some fallers here real quick. I wonder if you agree with this. A.J. Brown falling 10 spots. Wide receiver 7 below Puka Nacua at wide receiver 6. Do you think you'd agree with that?
I think below Puka, it's splitting hairs. It's fine. I think I'm looking at wide receiver 7 and I'm thinking about A.J. Brown. And I think that's probably pretty fair where he should be. I think, if I'm doing it honestly, I'm going to have Puka below him, but top 8 still, it's not like a slight to A.J. Brown. There's some uncertainty what's going on there, some dysfunction going on towards the last half of the season. Not entirely sure exactly how happy everyone is there right now, but they did get Kellen Moore, and I know that, he's going to get bashed for not turning Quentin Johnston into a stud. But I mean, the first few weeks of the season there,
he needs a hands transplant. Sorry.
We'll see. But then he lost Mike Williams. The running back was hurt all the time, just slow. Like, I don't know if you could blame everything that went bad there in LA with the Chargers on Kellen Moore. I mean, he didn't get fired, right? He was allowed to go interview. So there's a difference. It's not like they were trying to get rid of him, right? So I think that's probably a good thing for the Eagles. We'll see. I don't mind the rank, though, at the end of the day.
I think it's less about A.J. Brown moving down so much and more about the players ahead of him, to be honest, and just kind of seeing it. Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Jordan Love, Tua, Sam Laporta, Dak Prescott, Mark Andrews, Kyler Murray, Amon-Ra. And obviously I'm going higher and higher up the rankings, but it's like, who are you putting him over?
None of those guys.
Maybe Puka and Garrett Wilson, right? Like those are the only 2 guys, but even so, they have 3 years on him. And they've Garrett Wilson hasn't been as productive, but you're projecting that with a real quarterback, he can be as productive. And Puka Nacua has obviously proven to be an absolute stud at such a young age, with the offensive mind of McVay and all of the things that go along with his profile now. We have him in the same tier, right? It's tier 2. So definitely view them very, very similarly, but I think that they get that edge. We're looking at a rebuilder rankings here. They get that edge because of the youth and the upside that they still bring, which is very similar to A.J. Brown. So that's kind of why I think that's why he's dropped 10 spots. And honestly, I know that some of it was not necessarily him. I dropped him myself. I know I dropped him a little bit, but I do know that some of it is also just guys moving ahead of him as well. So that's part of it.
The next one is Jaden Reed. He fell 15 spots.
15 spots. We talked about this on our Dynasty Underdog Personal Ranking Symposium episode, our first edition. Briefly talked about, kind of the thought process behind it, but it's just a very deep wide receiver room.
Yes.
Right. Very cluttered wide receiver room. You're not quite sure who stands above the other. A lot of not similar stylistically, but a lot of similar producing players, right? They're just, they all get a similar amount of work. They do different things for sure. Christian Watson can't stay healthy, but if he is healthy, he's probably on the field all the time, but then so is Romeo Doubs. So that's 2 of them. We like Dontavian Wicks. Like, how does Jaden Reed get all the work we need him to get to be mini Debo Samuel, as people kind of call him, right? Like we need him to be on the field, getting the rushing work, getting the passing work, get it, kind of go through the process of like what I think is going on in our heads. And I know I dropped him down pretty significantly because there's a lot of players around him who are established fantasy producers. And so you're trying to thread that needle in the rebuilder rankings. Like, yeah, he has youth and upside, but is it
Is he
even
safe?
possible? Is he safe,
Yeah.
right? Is the stability there? So, really quick, sorry to keep going on, but we are going to not the next episode, but episode 3 through 6, we're going to be talking positionally in the Dynasty Underdog Ranking Symposium about how we're thinking about, what we're prioritizing positionally, what we want to see out of players to move them up our rankings, right? Different things that you really want to prioritize and see out of positions from a high level. We're going to get into more of that, but that's kind of what I think I'm trying to highlight here. Last one here I had was Josh Downs. He moved down 7 spots in our contender rankings, and I wanted to highlight that because we don't talk about the contender rankings too much, and that's because I think they're definitely more for specific use, obviously, and more to be used in a specific time of the season, and also for a very specific type of team build. Like you can use it right now, but that's if your team is like one of those top 2 competitors and you can kind of go ahead and prioritize certain players. But Josh Downs is just one of those where I really like him a lot. I'm very hopeful for him, but from a contender perspective, like, am I positive that he's going to be able to become a consistent player in 2024 with Anthony Richardson? Like, a lot needs to go right to get him there, which is why, like, I was thinking about it and I'm like, I don't think I should have him up that high because I'd rather, and I don't remember exactly who it was, but just say like he was near maybe like a Mike Evans or these older guys who are going to age out, but it's like, no, contender rankings are for those older guys, right? Like, let's move Josh Downs down a little bit because it doesn't make sense. So it's kind of going through that thought process with it as well.
I think it's fair, especially pointing out that these were your contender rankings and not the rebuild rankings. I think that's just a smart thing to do. Like, you can't be moving a guy like that up just because we're still not sure, right? That it would be
too much projection.
It really is, right? It's just not fair to put out rankings out there with a guy like Josh Downs. Even if we're high on Josh Downs and we're high on what could potentially happen there with Anthony Richardson, we just don't know. And as a contender, it's not even a piece that like I would advocate, hey, go get Josh Downs. Like, go get Josh Downs if you're trying to put together a young squad and rebuild the thing. But yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think that's the benefit of the rankings being split like that, man, because we don't have to, account for that in one set of rankings. We don't have to thread that needle. We can really put Josh Downs where we want him in the rebuilder rankings, and we can tier it a certain way to make it make sense, where it's like, yeah, but he's still in a tier with these other productive players, but we prioritize him over them because it's rebuilder. And then you go to our contender rankings and you're going to see a little bit of it flipped in that sense, especially the further down the rankings. When you're at the top of the rankings, they're going to be very similar. It's Dynasty and they're studs. Like, we don't need to shift the rankings around too much. Yeah. But when you get further down the rankings, these are the kind of things you start considering. And I think it's really beneficial when you have split rankings and you can kind of identify. Also, we have it, we're going to go over all this stuff, but we have it where you can see how much they've risen and fallen, between each update. And that's very helpful in identifying like, oh, okay, this guy's fallen for X reason. I agree, disagree with it.
Anything else you want to talk about before we get to some trades and non-trades?
No. We got like, I think these are all DU trades, almost all DU2, except for the last one, which is a Console Wars trade. So our favorite leagues. All
right. We have a 24 first for Higgins.
This is a non-trade. I got it sent to me. Okay, I lied. This is also Console Wars. 24 first for Higgins. The order is not set, and I think that was a smart move by the manager. The draft order is not set because it's like it's a 36-team league or whatever, and there's a lot of logistics that go into that. So, but I happen to know that this was like the second place team in PlayStation's first. So this is, again, Console Wars. Superflex Titan Premium, 3 copy, 3 division. So I'd really treat it as kind of 3 12-team leagues in one. And I just treat mine kind of like a 12-team league, and there's 3 copies of players available and a lot of managers that can send me stuff. So that's kind of how I treat it. But the 24 first was, again, from one of the top teams who was in the playoffs. And right off the bat, I'm like, I think T. Higgins is at the very least a mid first, not a late first. So I will decline.
That's fair. Is T. Higgins free agent this year?
He is.
He is. Okay, interesting. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't make any moves. So we see what happens anyway.
Yep, I think that's a really smart answer as well. I do think that it's better to let things settle with T. Higgins, because if he makes it back to the Bengals, then status quo, his value is good. If he ends up on another team like the Chiefs, then we have a value boost on our hands.
Yes. James Cook for the 111.
This was DU2. This wasn't my trade, but I'd probably rather have the 111. What do you think?
I think I would rather have the 111 just so I could see what it is. But I think it's a fair trade. That's probably what you're going to pay for James Cook.
I definitely don't see James Cook as a consistent running back option. I think that he can give you spike games, but I don't want to pay a first for that. So I would rather the first personally. 411 for Kareem Hunt.
Just take the running back. I know he just had a sports hernia surgery today. I'm sure he has plenty of time to recover, but he's a free agent. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes, but I think I'd rather just have the player. He's in the league. He's going to play another year. Let's see what happens.
He's 28 years old. I'll go shopping for the next Puka. All right. Give me that
fine.
Give me that 411. Give me that 411. It's not sexy, but I'll take the pick.
All this Puka Nakua, Brock Purdy stuff's going to have people hoarding fourths.
I'm gonna have the whole fourth round of the next two drafts. Right?
I have a ton of seconds.
That's good. That's good. I actually this is not on the sheet, but 107 or the 201, 3, and 4.
I might just go the 1, 3, and 4.
The 201, 203, 204.
Yeah, I might do that.
No,
107 is kind of like pretty tasty still. If it was like the one, I don't even know why it makes a difference. It was like 108, 109. Like I'm smashing that. Give me those seconds and let's go. See what I can do. Trust myself, right?
107. Well, because I think 107 is like still an opportunity right now. It feels like to get Brock Bowers.
Oh yeah, and that's right there.
And so like that's significant. So I didn't make the deal because I think it was originally somebody selling 201 and 204 or something to me, and I was like, I like you, but you're crazy. And they were like, what would it take? And I was like, I mean, I'd need at least 3 of those, and all of them need to be the first 3 of those picks that you have, you know. But even so, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with that because, like I said, Brock Bowers. So I thought that was an interesting one. I didn't make it happen. Okay, real quick here. This was a humdinger. It's the only way I can really describe it. David Njoku, Jalen Waddle. So that's one side. David Njoku plus Jalen Waddle for Dalton Schultz, Danny Dimes, Khalil Shakur, and a 25 third. What do you feel about this?
That's the Njoku side.
Yeah.
I don't want Schultz on my team. I mean, I have been saying go out and get yourself some Houston Texans. But I don't want Danny Dimes on my team. I don't want Schultz on my team. I do want Shakur, but I screwed that up.
Jesus, I didn't even want to mention that, but we might have to.
I don't want to open that up right now. But yeah, it's the Njoku Waddle side, man. Easy peasy.
Oh, man, I don't know. I'm so confused by this trade, man. This one it's just like all the value feels like it's on the Waddle and Njoku side. What Shakur, Danny Dimes, and a third for Waddle, and that doesn't feel good. And then Schultz for Njoku, that doesn't feel good. And Schultz is a free agent, and like I'd expect him to be back in Houston because they don't have anything beyond him besides Brevin Jordan, but you can't guarantee that. And it's like,
yeah, I don't think this is a time to be buying low on Danny Dimes if that was what's trying to go on here.
Yeah, and I guess that's my question. Is like I don't even think that there's motivation that could be explained to me that makes sense for moving those studs. So it's just one of those I don't know. I just caution because I think it's like, you know, upside of Shakur and all that.
The 2 best assets are on the same side in this trade.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's how I feel too. So I don't love it at all. That's a tough one.
Each man 110 111, 201 for Nico Collins and the 104.
Yeah, I want the 104.
Yeah, I just think that 104 really does offer so many good things that could happen to your dynasty team. I like Achan, but really, I'm still he's still small, and I think that still matters. That's a lot. That's a lot on the other side, though. 110, 111, 201. I think just because it is a 104 top four pick, I think I'll still go with that side, but like just barely.
There's a lot of draft capital on the other side for sure. And I
There
mean,
is, yeah.
maybe if you really needed to rebuild and you needed to take a bunch of shots, but for me, I'd prefer the 104, and I'd try to probably sell that during the draft. Like this is one of those things that, we have to understand. Draft picks carry a lot more value heading into your rookie drafts and in the rookie draft. So,
Absolutely.
if you were to hold this until the rookie draft, you could probably get more for it, or just move back a couple spots, that kind of thing, instead of dropping to 110, 111. But I mean, look, A-Chain, 110, 111, 201, those are not poor assets. Those are not bad dynasty assets by
No,
any
they're
means.
not.
So, I mean, it's not a terrible trade, but just Nico with the hype he has in the 104, those definitely feel like the best assets right now to have.
Last one here is Amon-Ra St. Brown for D-Hop, 24 first and 24 third. Amon-Ra St. Brown has done enough that I'm going to take him.
I mean, I think both Jake and I have Amon-Ra St. Brown as a tier 1 dynasty wide receiver in our rankings. So he's right up there with the best, in my opinion.
Yes.
The points per game are there. He's an absolute stud. He scores with the best of them. So I love me some Amon-Ra St. Brown. This trade makes me feel like I need to go buy some Amon-Ra St. Brown. This was in Console Wars, so there's a couple more opportunities there specifically. Okay. This was our boy Joe. I believe he just took over one of the orphans in Console Wars, and I think he just sold D-Hop. And I think it was like a mid first, let's say, and a third for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And it feels cheap to me, man.
Yeah,
it feels very cheap. Yeah.
That's a good trade, and that's a good way to welcome yourself to a new league.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good way to start churning your orphan into a team that you like, right? Into a team that you want it to be.
All right. I do have an offer that was sent via text and not an actual offer, which is probably best for me considering my last one. But I got offered Tank Dell, Javonte Williams, and David Njoku for my CD land.
That's an interesting offer, but I'm keeping CD.
Yeah, I'm not even going to respond, but yeah. Yeah. Maybe tomorrow I'll respond with like, okay.
You're like, I'm blocking his number. Yeah, I mean, one more tip before we get out of here: don't drink and trade, because you might not be able to tell which side you're getting in a sleeper, and trade away what's his name, Khalil Shakir for a fourth.
Yeah, I straight up was just like, oh yeah, man, that seems fair. It's like I was like, I'd much rather have Shakir than the 406, so let's do it.
You said that to him, and the trade got done. Oh my god, that is so funny. He must have been laughing his ass off.
I didn't know what the problem was in the morning. I'm like, what are you so mad about? I thought it was a pretty good trade.
Oh my god, my favorite part is that, like, oh, not even my favorite part. I just think it's funny that, like, I don't know, if it were me and you, I'd probably hit you up and be like, yo, let's just reverse it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, whatever. But like the fact that it was somebody else, like, I didn't know if that was going to happen organically, if they would reach out to you and be like, yo, like, I didn't realize, like, whatever. But like, I mean, it's not like CD for a fourth or something like stupid.
No,
you know
no hard
I mean?
feelings.
Yeah, it is. It happens. But honestly, it's a lesson learned. Like, this is what we're here for. And I do think that people make drunk trades all the time. People make, trades while they're sleeping all the time and do things that they don't mean to do. And it's just one of those cautionary tales, man. It's a lesson learned for Uriah. I guarantee you he'll never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
Bastard.
All right. Do you take check?
It'll be in the mail in 30 to 60 days, certified. Yeah. So, a little extra time.
Don't cash it until after tax returns come in, but that shit might bounce. No, what a shit show. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
Love this community. Join our Discord. I love talking to the listeners and everybody. So get in there, and we're doing mock drafts. We're doing the whole 9 yards. We got our rankings in there. So fun stuff this offseason. Join us.
Thanks for listening. Give us a listen on Spotify if you can. check out YouTube. Billy's doing a lot more there than we have done previously. Follow us on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, at Dynasty Underdog, at Uriah Dawkins, at Willie Beeman DFF, and at Jake Abrams. Other than that, y'all have a good night.
Peace out.
Peace out.